Hi, I'm Olivia James. A few years ago, I never imagined that a simple gesture, bringing flowers to my husband's office, would lead to one of the most devastating moments of my life. I thought I was being romantic, thoughtful even. I had picked out his favorite white lilies that morning, the ones that reminded him of our wedding day. The florist had wrapped them beautifully in cream-colored paper with a gold ribbon. I remember thinking how pleased he would be, how his face would light up when I walked through those glass doors. I was so naive. So blissfully, painfully naive. You see, I thought my marriage was stable. I really did. Daniel and I had been together for 8 years, married for 6 of those. We had a beautiful daughter, Lily, who was 4 years old at the time. We had a home in the suburbs with a white picket fence, quite literally. We had date nights every Friday. We said, "I love you," every morning. We were the couple that other couples looked at and said, "That's what we want." But I've learned something crucial since that day. Appearances mean absolutely nothing. The most beautiful facade can hide the most grotesque rot underneath. I remember driving to his office that afternoon. It was a Tuesday in April. The sun was shining, the kind of perfect spring day that makes you feel like everything is right with the world. I had dropped Lily off at my mother's house, telling her I was going to surprise Daddy at work. She had been so excited, helping me pick out which flowers to buy, her little hands pointing at the lilies with such enthusiasm. "Daddy loves these, Mommy," she had said. And I had smiled at her, kissed her forehead, completely unaware that within hours, her entire world would be different. What would you do if everything you knew was shattered in an instant? What would you do if the person you trusted most in the world, the person you built your life with, destroyed everything you believed in with a single sentence? Stick with me to see how one moment changed everything for me. Because I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story about betrayal. This is a story about survival. About finding strength when you thought you had none left. About realizing that the person you were protecting didn't deserve your protection at all. I walked into Daniel's office building at exactly 2:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone to make sure I wasn't interrupting an important meeting. That's who I was then, always considerate, always making sure I wasn't being an inconvenience, always putting everyone else first. God, I want to shake that version of myself. I want to tell her to turn around, to save herself from what's about to happen. But we can't change the past, can we? We can only survive it. The lobby was busy, people rushing around with their briefcases and their important phone calls. I felt a little out of place in my casual jeans and sweater, clutching those flowers like some sort of 1950s housewife. But I was excited. It was our anniversary in a week, and I thought this would be a sweet prelude to the celebration we had planned. I had already made reservations at the restaurant where he proposed. I had bought a new dress. I had arranged for Lily to spend the night with my parents. I had planned everything so carefully because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You put in the effort. You show them they matter. I took the elevator to the 15th floor where his office was located. Daniel worked for a major tech company, something to do with financial software that I never fully understood but always pretended to be interested in when he talked about it. He was the VP of Operations, a position he'd worked hard to achieve. I was proud of him. I had supported every late night, every business trip, every time he said he couldn't make it to Lily's recital or parent-teacher conference because work was too demanding. I had been understanding. I had been patient. I had been the perfect wife. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into the familiar corridor. I had been to his office before, of course. At Christmas parties, company picnics, the occasional lunch when I happened to be in the area. I knew the layout, knew where his office was, corner office with the big windows, the one he'd been so proud of when he got promoted 2 years ago. I walked down the hallway with those flowers in my arms, a smile on my face, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire life was about to implode. But as I got closer, I noticed something odd. There were voices coming from the main conference room, lots of them. Laughter, the sound of celebration. I could hear champagne bottles popping. My first thought was that maybe they'd landed a big client, or the quarterly numbers had come in better than expected. Daniel's company was always celebrating something. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should come back later. But then I thought, Why not join in? I could congratulate everyone, hand Daniel his flowers, maybe stay for a glass of champagne myself. I pushed open the conference room door, and that's when I saw him. Daniel, my husband, standing at the front of the room with his arm around a woman I'd never seen before. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with long dark hair and a tight red dress that showed off curves I'd lost after having Lily. She was beautiful in that effortless way that made my throat tighten with immediate, instinctive comparison. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It wasn't her beauty or the way Daniel's arm was draped possessively around her waist. It was what he was saying. "I want to thank you all for being here today to celebrate this amazing news," Daniel was saying, his voice filled with a joy I recognized because it was the same tone he'd used when I told him I was pregnant with Lily. "Rachel and I are thrilled to announce that we're expecting our first child together. She's 10 weeks along, and we couldn't be happier." The room erupted in applause. People were cheering, raising their glasses, rushing forward to congratulate them both. And I just stood there in the doorway, holding those white lilies, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart with their bare hands. His wife. He had called her his wife. Rachel. His wife. Not his girlfriend, not his partner. His wife. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, or maybe I was spinning, I couldn't tell. Everything seemed to blur together. The faces of his colleagues, the champagne glasses, the way Rachel's hand moved to rest protectively over her stomach, the smile on Daniel's face that I'd thought belonged to me and only me.
Someone noticed me then.
A woman from accounting whose name I couldn't remember, even though we'd met at least a dozen times. Her smile faltered when she saw my face, saw the flowers in my arms, saw the wedding ring on my finger that matched the one Daniel was still wearing. Her eyes went wide, and she grabbed the arm of the person next to her, whispering something urgent. Like a wave, the silence spread through the room. One by one, people stopped celebrating and started staring at me, and then Daniel saw me. Our eyes met across that conference room, and I watched every emotion flash across his face in rapid succession. Shock, fear, guilt, and then, horrifyingly, annoyance. Annoyance. As if I was the one disrupting something, as if I was the problem in this scenario. "Olivia," he said, and his voice sounded so different from how it had just moments ago. All that joy had evaporated.
"What are you
doing here?" What was I doing here? What was I doing here? I was bringing flowers to my husband, the man I had loved for 8 years, the father of my child, the person I had built my entire life around. But I couldn't say any of that. I couldn't say anything at all. My throat had closed up completely, and I just stood there like an idiot, clutching those flowers that suddenly felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Rachel looked confused, her perfectly manicured hand still resting on her stomach. "Daniel," she said, her voice uncertain. "Who is this? And do you know what he said? Do you want to know what my husband, the man who had promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or for worse until death do us part, do you want to know what he said? This is Olivia. It's complicated. Complicated. He reduced 8 years of my life, 6 years of marriage, our daughter, our home, everything we'd built together, to it's complicated." I don't remember dropping the flowers. I don't remember turning around and walking out of that conference room. But I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was in the elevator and the doors were closing, and I could see Daniel pushing through the crowd of people trying to reach me, but he was too late. The doors shut, and I was alone, descending back down to the lobby, back down to a life that would never be the same again. I sat in my car in the parking garage, for I don't know how long. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Time had stopped making sense. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't get the key in the ignition. My phone kept buzzing, Daniel calling, Daniel texting, over and over again. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't look at anything except the steering wheel, which I was gripping so hard my knuckles had turned white. The thing about betrayal, the thing nobody tells you, is that it doesn't hurt all at once. It's not like a car crash where you feel the impact immediately. It's more like drowning. First, you can't breathe. Then you start to panic. Then the water fills your lungs, and everything goes dark. I was in that first stage, the not being able to breathe stage. The panic would come later. The darkness after that. But even through the shock, even through the pain that was starting to radiate through my entire body like I'd been poisoned, my mind was working. It was strange, almost like I was having an out-of-body experience. Part of me was completely devastated, shattered into a million pieces. But another part, a part one didn't even know existed, was already calculating, already planning, already understanding what needed to happen next. Because here's what I realized sitting in that parking garage. Daniel hadn't just cheated on me. He hadn't just gotten another woman pregnant. He had married her, which meant that somewhere along the line he had divorced me, or at least he thought he had. Had he forged my signature? Had I signed something without reading it carefully enough? My mind raced through the past 6 months, trying to remember any documents he'd asked me to sign, any strange behavior, any clues I'd missed. And there had been clues. God, of course there had been clues. I had just been too trusting, too comfortable, too stupidly in love to see them. The late nights at the office that had become even more frequent. The business trips that seemed to multiply. The way he'd become distant in bed, like he was somewhere else even when he was with me. The new clothes, the new cologne, the way he'd suddenly become obsessed with working out. The times his phone would ring, and he'd leave the room to answer it, his voice dropping to a whisper I could never quite hear. I had noticed all of it. I had noticed, and I had explained it away, because that's what you do when you love someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You trust them. You believe them when they say everything is fine, that you're imagining things, that you're being paranoid. You gaslight yourself, because it's easier than facing the truth. But I couldn't explain this away. I couldn't rationalize what I had just seen. Rachel,
His wife.
pregnant with his child. Standing in that conference room accepting congratulations for starting a family with my husband. While I was what? A complication? An inconvenience? Something to be dealt with? My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Daniel. Olivia, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't what it looks like. I laughed. Actually laughed, sitting there alone in my car, in that cold parking garage. It wasn't what it looked like. What else could it possibly look like? Was there some alternate interpretation of your husband announcing that his other wife is pregnant that I was missing? But I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I never thought I'd need. Alex Carter. My divorce attorney friend from college. We'd stayed in touch over the years, had lunch a few times a year, exchanged Christmas cards. I'd even joked once about how lucky I was that I'd never need her professional services. She had laughed and said I could call her anytime if that ever changed. I guess things had changed. My hands were still shaking as I typed out the message. Alex, it's Olivia James. I need your help. Can we meet today? It's urgent. The response came back within minutes. Of course. My office. 5 p.m. I'll clear my schedule. And just like that, just by sending that text, I took the first step toward reclaiming my life. Because here's what I understood in that moment. I couldn't control what Daniel had done. I couldn't change the past. But I could damn well control what happened next. I don't remember driving to pick up Lily. I must have done it on autopilot because the next thing I knew, I was pulling into my mother's driveway. Lily came running out, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders, her face lit up with that beautiful, innocent joy that only 4-year-olds possess. My mother was right behind her, and one look at my face told her everything she needed to know. Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go inside and get your coloring books? Mommy and Grandma need to talk for just a minute, my mother said, her voice calm even though I could see the concern in her eyes. Once Lily was inside, my mother took my hands in hers. What happened? And I told her. Standing there in her driveway, I told her everything. About walking into that office, about Daniel's announcement, about Rachel and the baby, and how he had called her his wife. My mother's face went through a journey of emotions, shock, anger, disgust, and finally, a fierce protective rage that reminded me I was her daughter and she would go to war for me. That son of a bitch, she said, which shocked me because my mother never cursed. That absolute son of a bitch. What are you going to do? I have a meeting with Alex Carter at 5, I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too calm, too controlled. Can you keep Lily for the night? I need to handle some things. You can keep her as long as you need, my mother said immediately. Olivia, honey, are you okay? Was I okay? What a ridiculous question. My husband had another wife. He had another baby on the way. My entire marriage had been a lie, or at least the last part of it had been. My daughter was about to learn that her father was not the man we thought he was. Our life, as we knew it, was over. Was I okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. Alex Carter's office was in downtown Chicago, in one of those tall glass buildings that screamed success and power. I'd been there before for those occasional lunches, but never as a client. Never as someone who needed her particular expertise in dismantling marriages and protecting people from the wreckage. She met me in the lobby herself, took one look at my face, and wrapped me in a hug that I didn't even know I needed. I didn't cry. I still hadn't cried, which should have worried me, but I was too numb to care. Alex guided me up to her office, sat me down on the comfortable leather couch, and handed me a bottle of water. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. Alex listened without interrupting, her expression growing more severe with each detail. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. Olivia, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. In the last year, has Daniel asked you to sign any legal documents? Anything at all, even something that seemed routine? I thought back, my mind sluggish with shock and exhaustion. He had me sign some papers about refinancing the house, and something about updating our wills. And, oh God, there was something about a trust fund for Lily. He said it was important for tax purposes. Alex's expression darkened. Did you read them carefully? I skimmed them. Daniel explained what they were for, and I trusted him. We'd always handled legal stuff together, and he'd never given me a reason not to trust him. Olivia, I need you to understand something. If Daniel is claiming to be married to this other woman, one of three things has happened. Either he's lying to her and they're not actually legally married, or he's committed bigamy, or he's somehow obtained a divorce from you without you realizing it. Given what you've told me about the documents, I'm worried it might be the third option. The words hit me like physical blows. He divorced me? Without me knowing? It's possible. There are ways to manipulate the system, especially if the other party is trusting and signs documents without reading them thoroughly. He could have included divorce papers mixed in with other documents, or filed in a different jurisdiction claiming you couldn't be located. It's illegal, of course, but it happens more often than you'd think. The rage started then. It began as a small ember in my chest and grew into a blazing inferno that consumed every other emotion. He had divorced me without my knowledge? He had ended our marriage, our vows, everything we'd built, and I hadn't even known it was happening? While I was making him dinner and raising his daughter and planning anniversary celebrations, he was legally erasing me from his life. What do I do? I asked, and my voice was shaking with fury now instead of pain. First, we figure out your legal status. I'll start pulling records tomorrow morning. Second, we secure your financial position. Do you have joint accounts with Daniel?
Yes.
Joint checking, joint savings. The house is in both our names. He has a 401k and some investments. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home tonight, and you're going to gather every financial document you can find. Bank statements, investment records, tax returns, everything. Make copies of all of it. Then tomorrow morning, first thing, you're going to open new accounts in your name only, and we're going to start protecting your assets. If Daniel has been planning this, he may have already started moving money around. We need to act fast. Won't he notice? Won't he try to stop me? Alex's smile was sharp and fierce. Let him try. You're his wife, Olivia. Legally, until we determine otherwise, you have every right to protect your share of the marital assets. And if he's not actually divorced from you like he thinks he is, he's committed bigamy, which is a crime. Either way, he's in serious trouble. Something in Alex's words made me sit up straighter. Made me realize that yes, I was devastated. Yes, I was heartbroken. But I wasn't helpless. I wasn't powerless. Daniel had made his moves in secret, thinking I'd never find out or that I'd be too weak to fight back when I did. But he was wrong. He had underestimated me so completely, and that was going to be his biggest mistake. What else? I asked. Document everything. Every text he sends, every call, every interaction. Keep a journal of what happened today. Write down everything you remember. It might be useful later. Change your passwords on everything, email, bank accounts, social media, everything. Don't let him have access to anything of yours. And Olivia? Alex leaned forward, her expression intense. Don't confront him yet. I know you want to. I know you want to scream and yell and demand answers. But the element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. Let him think you're too shocked and hurt to take action. Let him get comfortable. And while he's celebrating his new life, we'll be building your case. I nodded slowly. It went against every instinct I had. I wanted to call Daniel right that second and destroy him with my words, wanted to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused me. But Alex was right. Emotional reactions would only hurt me in the long run. What I needed was cold, calculated strategy. One more thing, Alex said. How much does Daniel make? And do you work? He makes about $250,000 a year. I stopped working when Lily was born. He wanted me to focus on being a mother, said we didn't need my income anyway. Alex's expression told me exactly what she thought of that. So you've been out of the workforce for 4 years, gave up your career to raise his child and manage his household, and now he's trying to erase you from his life? Olivia, by the time we're done, Daniel is going to regret the day he decided to betray you. I went home that night to an empty house. Daniel hadn't come back yet, which was probably smart of him. I didn't know what I would do if I saw his face right then. The rage was still burning in me, mixed with a pain so profound I could barely acknowledge it because if I did, I knew I would fall apart completely. The house looked the same as it always did. The same furniture we'd picked out together. The same photos on the walls, our wedding day, Lily's birth, family vacations. All lies. Every single one of them was a lie. Or at least, they had become lies at some point, and I'd been too blind to see it. I went to Daniel's home office, the room he always kept locked when he wasn't in there. But I knew where he kept the spare key, in a kitchen drawer under a stack of takeout menus. I'd never had a reason to use it before. I'd respected his privacy, respected his need for a space that was just his. God, I had been such a fool. The office was neat, organized. Daniel had always been meticulous about his workspace. I started going through his file cabinet, pulling out folders, laying them on his desk. Bank statements, investment records, insurance policies, our mortgage documents, tax returns from the last 5 years. I found his business records, his contracts, everything Alex had told me to look for. And then I found something else. A folder shoved in the very back of the bottom drawer, hidden behind a stack of old electronics manuals. Inside were papers. Legal papers. Divorce papers.
With my signature on them.
Except I had never signed divorce papers. I would have remembered that. Unless I looked at the date. Filed 8 months ago. 8 months. And the signature, my signature, looked right, but something about it was off. The loop on the O in Olivia was too big. The way the J in James curved was wrong. It was a good forgery, good enough. Enough that it had apparently fooled a court, but it wasn't actually my signature. He had forged my signature on divorce papers. Had filed them in a county 2 hours away, claimed I had been served and hadn't contested. Had probably paid off someone or exploited some loophole in the system. And then he had married Rachel, probably thinking he was safe, thinking I would never find out or that by the time I did, it would be too late to matter. I took photos of everything with my phone. Every page of those divorce papers, every document in that folder. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Daniel couldn't know that I knew.
Not yet.
My phone had been buzzing all night. Daniel calling. Daniel texting. The messages had evolved from "we need to talk" to "please answer me" to "I can explain everything" to "you're being unreasonable." That last one almost made me laugh again. I was being unreasonable? I was the problem in this situation? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I went through the rest of the house, gathering every document I could find. I photographed everything: credit card statements, receipts, emails printed out and left in drawers. I downloaded our bank account information, our investment portfolios, everything. If Daniel wanted to play dirty, I would bury him in documentation. It was almost midnight when I heard his car pull into the driveway. I was in our bedroom by then, sitting on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed. Every light in the house was off except for the bedside lamp. I heard the front door open, heard him call my name uncertainly. "Olivia? Are you here?" I didn't answer. I listened to his footsteps on the stairs, heard him pause outside our bedroom door. When he opened it, I looked up at him for the first time since that conference room. He looked terrible. His tie was loosened, his hair was a mess, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Good. I hoped he was suffering. I hoped he was drowning in guilt and fear. Though I doubted it. Guilt requires a conscience, and I was starting to realize that Daniel might not actually have one. "Olivia," he said, and his voice was pleading.
Please.
"Let me explain." "Explain what, Daniel?" My voice was calm. Too calm. It scared even me. "Explain how you got another woman pregnant? Explain how you have a wife named Rachel? Explain which part?" He flinched. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it? Please enlighten me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been living a double life. It looks like you've been lying to me for months, maybe longer. It looks like everything about our marriage has been a complete fraud." "I was going to tell you," he said, and the audacity of that statement actually left me speechless for a moment. I
didn't know how.
I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me?" I stood up then, all that carefully controlled rage finally breaking through. "You got another woman pregnant. You married her. You stood in front of your entire office and announced you were having a baby with her. But sure, you didn't want to hurt me. How considerate of you, Daniel. Rachel and we fell in love. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And I couldn't just leave her when I found out she was pregnant. That would make me a terrible person." I stared at him in absolute disbelief. "As opposed to cheating on your wife and forging her signature on divorce papers? That makes you what, exactly?" His face went pale. "You found those." "I found them. I found everything, Daniel. And I've already contacted my attorney. So, whatever you thought you were going to accomplish by sneaking in here and trying to manipulate me with your tears and your excuses, you can forget it. Olivia, please. Think about Lily. Think about what this will do to her." And there it was. The manipulation tactic I should have seen coming. Use our daughter as leverage. Make me the bad guy for not quietly accepting his betrayal for the sake of keeping the family together. Except there was no family to keep together. He had destroyed that all by himself. "Don't you dare," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "Don't you dare use our daughter to try to guilt me into accepting this. You should have thought about Lily before you started an affair. You should have thought about her before you decided to create a whole new family with someone else. You destroyed our family, Daniel."
Not me.
"You." "I still love you," he said desperately. "We can work this out. I can fix this." "No," I said simply. "You can't. Because I don't love you anymore. I don't even know who you are. The man I loved wouldn't have done this. The man I loved was loyal and honest and kind. You're just a stranger wearing his face." He tried to step closer to me, but I held up my hand. "Get out. This is my house too. Not for long. Get out, Daniel. Go to your wife. Go to Rachel. I'm sure she's wondering where you are." He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have convinced him it wasn't worth it. He left, and I listened to his car pull out of the driveway for what I hoped would be the last time. Only then, alone in that empty house, did I finally let myself cry. The next few days were a blur of activity. Alex moved fast, faster than I'd thought possible. We discovered that Daniel's forged divorce wasn't actually legal. There were enough irregularities in the filing that it could be challenged and overturned. Which meant that technically, I was still his legal wife. Which meant that Rachel wasn't. Which meant that Daniel had committed bigamy. We can pursue criminal charges if you want, Alex told me over coffee in her office. Bigamy is a felony in Illinois. He could go to prison. I thought about it. Thought about Daniel behind bars, about the public humiliation, about what it would do to his career and his reputation.
Part of me wanted it.
Wanted him to suffer the way he'd made me suffer. But another part, the part that still had to co-parent with him for the next 14 years, knew that destroying him completely wouldn't help anyone, especially not Lily. No criminal charges, I said finally. But I want everything else. I want the house. I want primary custody of Lily. I want alimony and child support that reflects his actual income, not whatever he tries to hide. I want him to understand that actions have consequences. Consider it done, Alex said with a satisfied smile. We froze the joint accounts. All of them. Daniel tried to access them the next day and found every single one locked. He called me, furious, demanding to know what I'd done. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail, saved the recording of him screaming threats and accusations. More evidence for the file. Alex filed motions with the court. Restraining orders to keep Daniel away from me except for scheduled interactions regarding Lily. Petitions for emergency custody. Discovery requests for all his financial records. We hit him with everything at once, a coordinated assault that left him scrambling. And here's what I learned about Daniel in those next few weeks. When he was in control, he was smooth and confident and charming. But when he wasn't, when things didn't go his way, he fell apart completely.
He made mistakes.
He sent angry emails that could be used against him in court. He tried to hide assets in ways that were easily traceable. He underestimated me again and again, assuming I would be too emotional, too hurt, too weak to fight back effectively. He was wrong. About 2 weeks after everything imploded, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. James? A woman's voice, tentative and uncertain. This is Rachel. Rachel Morrison.
I think we need to talk.
My first instinct was to hang up. This woman, this other woman, had been sleeping with my husband, was pregnant with his baby, had stood in that conference room accepting congratulations for stealing my life. Why would I want to talk to her? But curiosity won out. What do you want, Rachel? I didn't know, she said, and her voice cracked. I swear to God, I didn't know he was still married to you. He told me he was divorced. He showed me papers. I thought it was real. He showed you the forged divorce papers, I said flatly. They were fake. She sounded genuinely shocked. Oh my God. Oh my God. What has he done? And that's when I realized Rachel was a victim too. Not in the same way I was. She hadn't lost years of her life, hadn't had a child with him, hadn't built a whole existence on the foundation of his lies. But she'd been lied to as well. She was pregnant with the baby of a man who had deceived her just as thoroughly as he'd deceived me. Daniel lied to both of us, I said, and some of the anger drained out of me. Not all of it. I wasn't ready to forgive or forget. But enough that I could see her as a person rather than just a symbol of everything I'd lost. He's very good at lying. I'm so sorry, she whispered. If I had known, I never would have. I'm not that kind of person. I don't steal other women's husbands. I believe you, I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. What are you going to do? I don't know. I'm pregnant. I can't just, but I also can't stay with someone who would do this. Who would lie like this? What kind of father would he be to my child if he could abandon his first family so easily? Not a good one, I said honestly. But that's something you'll have to figure out for yourself. We talked for almost an hour. Rachel told me how she and Daniel had met at a work conference 8 months ago. How he'd been charming and attentive, had swept her off her feet with expensive dinners and weekend trips. How he'd told her he was divorced, that his ex-wife had been difficult, and they'd separated on bad terms, but it was all finalized. How he'd proposed after just 3 months, and she'd said yes because she'd never felt this way about anyone before. The timeline made me sick. 8 months ago. That was right around when he'd filed those forged divorce papers. He'd had it all planned out so carefully, or so he'd thought. end his marriage to me legally, start a new life with Rachel, and I'd just what? Never find out? Accept it quietly? Disappear? After I hung up with Rachel, I sat for a long time thinking about the man I'd married. Or rather, the man I'd thought I married. Because the person who could orchestrate such an elaborate betrayal, who could look me in the eye every day while building a whole separate life, wasn't someone I knew at all. The court date finally arrived 6 weeks after that terrible day in Daniel's office. I had spent those weeks preparing with Alex, gathering evidence, building our case. We had financial records showing Daniel's attempts to hide assets. We had emails proving he'd lied to Rachel about being divorced. We had testimony from his colleagues about how he'd introduced Rachel as his wife. We had the forged divorce papers with handwriting analysis showing the signature wasn't mine. We had everything. Daniel showed up with his own attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who probably charged $800 an hour. They tried every tactic they could think of, claiming I was unfit as a mother, suggesting I had abandoned the marriage, attempting to argue that the forged divorce should stand because it would be too complicated to unwind. Alex destroyed every argument methodically and thoroughly. She presented our evidence piece by piece, building an undeniable picture of Daniel's deception and manipulation. His attorney tried to object, tried to redirect, but there was no defense against the truth. I watched Daniel's face as his lies were exposed one by one. Watched him realize that his carefully constructed new life was crumbling around him. Watched him understand that he wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who had probably seen every kind of marital deception imaginable. But even she looked disgusted as Alex laid out the full scope of what Daniel had done. "Mr. James," she said when Alex was finished, "I've been on this bench for 23 years, and I can honestly say this is one of the most egregious cases of marital fraud I have ever encountered. You forged your wife's signature on legal documents. You entered into a bigamous marriage. You attempted to hide assets that rightfully belong to the marital estate. And through it all, you showed a stunning lack of remorse or accountability." Daniel tried to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "I don't want to hear your excuses, Mr. James. I've heard enough. Here's what's going to happen. The forged divorce is void. Your marriage to Ms. Morrison is legally invalid. Mrs. James will retain primary custody of your daughter, with you receiving supervised visitation until you can demonstrate that you're a stable presence in her life. The marital home goes to Mrs. James. You will pay alimony in the amount of $4,000 per month for the next 5 years, as well as child support of $2,000 per month until your daughter reaches 18. You will also be responsible for half of all her educational and medical expenses. And Mr. James? If you ever attempt something like this again, I will personally ensure that criminal charges are filed against you. Do I make myself clear?" Daniel's face had gone gray. His attorney was trying to whisper something to him, but he wasn't listening. He was staring at me, and I stared right back. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just looked at him, this man who had tried to erase me from his life, and let him see that he had failed, that I was still here, that I had won. After the hearing, Daniel tried to approach me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Alex stepped between us immediately. "Don't," she said firmly. "You have no right to speak to my client outside of what's outlined in the custody agreement." "Olivia, please," Daniel said, trying to look around Alex to see me. "Can we just talk for a minute? And here's the thing. Part of me wanted him to see my face, to see the devastation he'd caused, to acknowledge what he'd done and apologize and maybe, somehow, make sense of any of it. But the stronger part of me, the part that had been forged in fire over these past weeks, knew that nothing he said would matter. No explanation would be good enough. No apology would change anything. "No," I said simply. "We have nothing to talk about, Daniel. Everything that needs to be said has been said in that courtroom. You'll communicate with me through my attorney regarding Lily. That's it. That's all you get from me now." "I never meant to hurt you," he said desperately. "You have to believe that." "I don't have to believe anything," I replied. "And I don't. Goodbye, Daniel." I walked away and I didn't look back. The months that followed were a strange mixture of grief and relief. Grief for the life I'd thought I had, for the man I'd thought I'd married, for the future I'd imagined. But also relief. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore, didn't have to ignore the signs or make excuses. Relief that I could finally start building a life that was truly mine. I got a job. It wasn't glamorous, administrative work at a marketing firm, but it was mine. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed having my own income, my own identity outside of being someone's wife and someone's mother. Lily adjusted better than I'd feared. She was confused at first about why Daddy didn't live with us anymore, why she only saw him certain days. But kids are resilient in ways adults aren't, and she adapted. Daniel's life, on the other hand, fell apart spectacularly. Word got out at his company about what he'd done. Rachel told several people before she left him and moved back to her home state. His reputation was destroyed. He was asked to resign from his position, though they called it pursuing other opportunities. He had to get a new job at a smaller company making significantly less money, which made the alimony and child support that much harder for him to pay. Rachel lost the baby. She called to tell me, which surprised me until I realized I was probably the only person she knew who might understand. I felt bad for her. She hadn't deserved any of this. She'd been collateral damage in Daniel's selfishness, just like I had been. I started therapy. It helped, having someone objective to talk to about the betrayal and the anger and the slow, painful process of rebuilding my sense of self. My therapist helped me see that Daniel's actions weren't a reflection of my worth, that I hadn't failed as a wife, that sometimes people are just fundamentally selfish and no amount of love or effort can change that. I reconnected with old friends I'd let slip away during my marriage. I started doing things I'd always wanted to do but had somehow never gotten around to. I took painting classes, joined a book club, learned how to garden. I remembered who Olivia James was when she wasn't defined by her relationship to Daniel. And slowly, painfully, I began to heal. A year after that awful day in the office, I was sitting in my backyard, in my house, watching Lily play with her new puppy. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My mother was inside making dinner. I had friends coming over later. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine in a way it had never been before. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I miss you. Can we talk?" Daniel. Still trying, even after everything. Still believing that somehow, some way, he could manipulate his way back into my life. I blocked the number without responding. Because here's what I finally understood. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me. He had underestimated me. He had assumed I would be too broken, too weak, too devastated to fight back. He had assumed his lies would hold, that his new life would work out, that I would quietly disappear into his past. He was wrong about all of it. I had found strength I didn't know I possessed. I had learned that I was capable of surviving things I thought would destroy me. I had discovered that I didn't need him, had never needed him, that I was complete all on my own. The betrayal had shattered me. But I had picked up the pieces and built something new, something stronger, something that was entirely mine. And no matter what Daniel did, no matter what he said, he couldn't take that away from me. If you're listening to this and you've experienced something similar, if someone you trusted has betrayed you, if your life has been turned upside down by someone else's selfishness, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. You will survive this. It might not feel like it right now. You might feel like the pain will never end, like you'll never be whole again. But you will. Take back your power. Don't let their actions define you. Don't let their betrayal break you. Get angry if you need to, God knows I did. Use that anger as fuel. But don't let it consume you. Don't let them have that much control over your life. Document everything. Protect yourself legally and financially. Don't trust that they'll do the right thing because they've already proven they won't. And most importantly, don't try to make sense of it. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to understand why they did what they did, trying to figure out what you could have done differently. The truth is, their actions aren't about you. They're about them and their own character flaws. My story isn't unique. Betrayal happens every day. But how you respond to it, how you rebuild afterward, that's what defines you. Not what was done to you, but what you do after. I chose to fight. I chose to reclaim my life. I chose to become someone stronger, someone who wouldn't accept less than she deserved ever again. And if you're in this situation right now, I hope you'll make the same choice. Have you ever had your life turned upside down by betrayal? How did you regain your power? I'd love to hear your stories because we're stronger together than we are alone. We can support each other through these terrible moments and come out the other side, not just surviving, but thriving. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you feel less alone, or gave you hope that you can survive your own betrayal, please share it. Subscribe for more real, empowering stories like mine. Because the truth is, we all have stories. We've all survived things we thought would break us. And by sharing those stories, by being honest about our pain and our strength, we help each other heal. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you're stronger than you know. You will survive this. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the worst thing that ever happened to you is also the thing that taught you just how powerful you really are. Stay strong. Take back your power. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're less than you are. This is Olivia James, and this is my story of survival.